Ethan Caldwell stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his 52nd floor office at Caldwell Enterprises, the Chicago skyline glittering like a constellation of ambition under the December dusk. At 37, he was the youngest billionaire CEO in the city's tech scene, his AI-driven innovations reshaping industries. Yet the weight of his success felt like a cold anchor in his chest. His phone vibrated on the glass desk, Lucas's name flashing for the 5th time that morning, a persistent thorn in Ethan's carefully ordered world. With a grimace, he answered, his voice clipped. "Lucas, I'm finalizing the Orion acquisition. This better be critical." Lucas's familiar drawl, half pleading, half mischief, spilled through. "Ethan, buddy, I need a solid. It's just one night." Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose, memories of their college days at Northwestern flickering Lucas's reckless charm, a stark contrast to Ethan's disciplined rise from a scholarship kid to a titan of industry. Lucas wanted Ethan to join a double date to impress his new girlfriend, Emma, promising it would be quick, just dinner at Aurora, a place Ethan hadn't visited since Sophia, his ex-fiancée, shattered his trust 4 years ago. "I don't have time for your setups," Ethan said, glancing at the reports stacked like sentinels on his desk. The Orion deal, his latest chess move to dominate the II market. Lucas's voice softened. "You haven't lived since Sophia, man. Just 4 hours, for me." Ethan's jaw tightened at her name. The betrayal still a raw scar. Sophia had left him for a rival CEO, taking with her his belief in love. He'd built walls since, his penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan as empty as his evenings, filled only with work and the hum of servers. Yet Lucas's plea stirred something, a faint echo of the boy who once dreamed under starlit skies, sketching constellations in a tattered notebook. "Fine," Ethan relented. "Text me the details, but don't expect me to play nice." Lucas whooped, oblivious to the storm in Ethan's chest. As he hung up, Ethan's gaze drifted to a photo on his shelf, him and his late father at an observatory, a rare moment of warmth before cancer stole him when Ethan was 15. His father had taught him to find wonder in the stars, but Ethan had traded that for power, each deal a step further from that wide-eyed kid. Now, as snow dusted the city below, he wondered if he'd lost more than Sophia, if he'd lost himself. The Orion deal loomed, but Lucas's call had cracked the armor, just enough to let doubt seep in. Was this empire worth the solitude? He adjusted his tie, steeling himself for the night ahead, unaware that a chance encounter at Aurora would shift his orbit entirely. Ethan stepped out of his Bentley into the biting Chicago wind, the elegant facade of Aurora glowing like a beacon against the snow-dusted evening. His driver, Marcus, nodded silently, accustomed to Ethan's terse instructions to wait. Ethan adjusted his cashmere coat, steeling himself for an evening he'd rather avoid, his mind still tethered to the Orion acquisition spreadsheets. As he approached Aurora's gilded doors, a sharp voice cut through the hum of the city, a young woman arguing with a street vendor half a block away. "I paid you $10. The coffee was $5, she said, her tone firm but fraying with desperation. The vendor, a grizzled man bundled in a parka, shrugged dismissively. "Lady, I got a $5, that's it." Her shoulders slumped, her breath clouding in the cold as she clutched a warm canvas bag. "That was my last 10, please." Ethan, drawn by an instinct he couldn't name, found himself walking toward them, his polished shoes crunching on the snow-dusted sidewalk. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his presence commanding silence from both. The woman turned, and Ethan's breath caught her hazel eyes, flecked with gold, held a fierce honesty, framed by dark curls escaping a knitted scarf. She wore a threadbare coat, but her posture radiated dignity. "This isn't your concern," the vendor snapped, but Ethan's gaze didn't waver. He pulled a 20 from his wallet and handed it over. "Keep the change." The vendor's scowl vanished as he pocketed the bill and shuffled off. The woman's eyes narrowed slightly, pride warring with gratitude. You didn't have to do that, but thank you. I'm Claire Dawson, and I'll pay you back. I promise. Ethan shook his head, studying her face. There was no pretense, just raw sincerity that felt foreign in his world of calculated motives. No need. It's nothing. She smiled, a small, radiant thing that carved dimples into her cheeks, softening the moment. It's something to me. $5 buys a week's coffee. For my kids at the community center. Intrigued, Ethan gestured toward Aurora. Are you meeting someone here? Claire's smile faltered. A blind date, my friend Emma's idea. She thinks I need a life outside work. A suspicion bloomed, confirmed when Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. Asterisk running late. Stall Emma and her friend if you're there first. Asterisk your friend wouldn't be Emma, would she? He asked, watching Claire's eyes widen. How did you know? Before he could explain, the realization hit. This was his date, the roommate. Claire, in her scuffed boots and earnest gaze, was nothing like the polished women Lucas usually pushed his way. Inside Aurora, the maître d' led them to a candlelit table, the restaurant's opulence a stark contrast to Claire's unassuming presence. She hesitated, glancing at the crystal chandeliers. This place is fancier than my entire apartment building. Ethan pulled out her chair, noticing the frayed hem of her scarf as she shed her coat, revealing a simple green dress that somehow made her eyes glow brighter. You belong here tonight, he said, surprising himself with the gentleness in his tone. As they waited for Lucas and Emma, who were predictably delayed, Claire fidgeted with her napkin. So, you're Lucas's friend, the workaholic CEO? She teased, her smile playful but piercing. Ethan chuckled, a rare sound that felt like dusting off an old instrument. He's not wrong. I'm Ethan Caldwell. Her eyebrows lifted, but there was no calculation in her gaze, only curiosity. Emma said you're intense, but she didn't mention kind. The word caught him off guard. Kind wasn't a label he wore, not when his days were spent out maneuvering corporate sharks. Their conversation flowed, Claire sharing stories of her work at a community center for at-risk youth, her voice lighting up as she described a shy boy who'd found confidence through her reading program. Ethan, usually guarded, found himself admitting his love for astronomy, how he'd once spent nights mapping stars before boardrooms claimed him. When Lucas texted again, emergency, Emma's cousin's car broke down. You're on your own. Ethan. And Claire exchanged a look, amusement and resignation mingling. Typical, Claire said, laughing softly. Emma runs on chaos time. Ethan leaned back, the weight of his day lifting slightly. Lucas, too. Shall we stay, make the most of it? Claire nodded, her smile a quiet challenge. As they ordered a simple pasta. For her, a steak for him. Ethan watched her take in the restaurant's elegance, her wonder unguarded. She sipped her wine, a modest red, and grinned. My wine expertise is whatever's under $10. Her honesty disarmed him, a stark contrast to the artifice of his usual world. By the time their food arrived, Ethan realized he was enjoying himself, a sensation as unfamiliar as the warmth spreading in his chest. Claire Dawson, with her second-hand coat and fierce compassion, was a puzzle he wanted to solve. Claire's fork paused over her pasta as she laughed, her hazel eyes crinkling at Ethan's rare admission that he'd once dreamed of being an astronomer, not a CEO, sketching constellations in a flashlight-lit tent with his father before cancer stole him away. Inside Aurora's gilded warmth, their table felt like an oasis, the soft glow of candlelight softening Ethan's sharp jawline as he leaned forward, his guarded demeanor unraveling with each story Claire shared. She spoke of her community center in Chicago's River North, where foster kids found refuge. Her voice trembled with love for a girl who'd written her first poem after months of silence. "It's not about saving them," Claire said, her fingers tracing the stem of her wine glass. "It's about giving them a space where they can feel they matter." Ethan watched her, the sincerity in her words slicing through the cynicism he'd hardened around his heart since Sophia's betrayal 4 years ago, when she'd left him for a rival, taking his trust with her. He'd thought success would fill that void, but Claire's passion for small, meaningful moments made his boardroom victories feel like hollow. "Do you find meaning in your work?" she asked, her directness catching him off guard. Ethan hesitated, his fork hovering over his steak. "I employ thousands," he said carefully. "Their jobs depend on my decisions." Claire's gaze softened but didn't waver. "That's the CEO talking. What about Ethan?" The question pierced him, and for a moment he saw himself at 15, staring at stars, not spreadsheets. Before he could answer, the waiter refilled their glasses, and Claire shifted the conversation to lighter ground, sharing how she'd turned her tiny apartment into a haven with thrift store books and mismatched mugs. Ethan found himself smiling, admitting he still owned his father's old telescope, gathering dust in his penthouse. As dessert arrived, a delicate chocolate tart for her, espresso for him. Ethan's phone buzzed again. Another text from Lucas. "Stuck with Emma's cousin. You and Claire, good." Claire checked her own phone, laughing softly. "Emma says it's a family crisis, which probably means her cousin lost her keys again." Ethan shook his head, amused. "They're hopeless." Their eyes met, a shared understanding that this setup, however accidental, felt right. Claire's dimples deepened as she sipped her wine, her cheeks flushed from the warmth of the room. "I didn't expect to enjoy this," she admitted. "I thought you'd be colder." Ethan's chest tightened, her honesty disarming. "I thought you'd be like Lucas's usual friends, flashy, shallow." Claire's laugh was bright, unguarded. "I'm the opposite of flashy. My kids tease me about my ancient boots." The mention of her kids, her work, stirred something in Ethan, a longing for purpose beyond profit margins. As they finished dessert, Ethan noticed Claire shiver slightly, her thin dress no match for the winter chill waiting outside. "Let me drive you home," he offered, signaling for the check. Claire hesitated, pride flickering in her eyes. "It's out of your way. I can take the bus." Ethan frowned, the thought of her alone in the cold unthinkable. "Not in this weather, please." She relented, her smile soft but resolute. "Okay, but only because you said please." Outside, Marcus pulled the Bentley to the curb, and Ethan held the door for Claire, catching the faint scent of lavender from her scarf. As they settled into the plush interior, Claire ran her fingers over the leather seats, her voice teasing. "This car's worth more than my rent for a decade." Ethan chuckled, a sound he barely recognized. "Probably." Her expression turned serious, her profile illuminated by passing streetlights. "Does it ever feel heavy, all this wealth?" The question caught him off guard, echoing the doubts that had haunted him earlier. "Sometimes," he admitted. "It's why I work so hard to justify it." Claire nodded, her gaze distant. "I get that. I pour everything into my kids because they deserve more than the world's given them." The car slowed as they reached her modest apartment building in Wicker Park, its faded brick a stark contrast to Ethan's sleek penthouse. Marcus opened Claire's door, holding an umbrella against the swirling snow. "Thank you, Ethan," she said, her voice warm. "For dinner, for listening." Ethan stepped out, ignoring Marcus's raised eyebrow. "I'll walk you up." The lobby was dim, with flickering lights and peeling paint, but Claire moved through it with quiet confidence, leading him to a creaky elevator. "It groans, but it's safe," she assured, her smile easing the jolt as it climbed to the 4th floor. At her door, apartment 4B, Claire fumbled with her keys. then turned to face him. I had a good time, despite the setup. Ethan's throat tightened, an unfamiliar urge to linger pulling at him. So did I. Her hazel eyes searched his, and for a moment, the hallway seemed to shrink, the air charged with possibility. Then Ethan's phone buzzed, a reminder of the Orion deal waiting. He silenced it, but the spell broke. "Good night, Claire," he said, stepping back. "Good night, Ethan," she replied, her smile lingering as she slipped inside. As Ethan returned to the Bentley, he caught a shadow across the street, a figure with a camera, the flash barely visible in the snow. He dismissed it as tabloid nonsense, his face too familiar in Chicago's gossip pages, but unease settled in his gut. Claire's warmth, her unguarded heart, had stirred something he'd buried deep, and he wasn't ready to let it go. Ethan stood in his penthouse 3 days after meeting Claire, the Chicago skyline a glittering backdrop to his restless thoughts, her hazel eyes and dimpled smile intruding on his focus as he reviewed Orion acquisition terms. His assistant, Nora, had confirmed that Claire's community center in River North was supported by the Harper Foundation, a charity hosting a gala for youth education at the Art Institute of Chicago, and Ethan had impulsively invited Claire, driven by a need to see her again despite his better judgment. She'd hesitated, her voice crackling over the phone with doubt about fitting into his world, but agreed, promising to borrow a dress from Emma. Now, as Ethan adjusted his black tie in the Bentley en route to Claire's Wicker Park apartment, a nervous energy hummed through him, unfamiliar and unsettling for a man who commanded boardrooms with ease. Marcus pulled to the curb, and Claire emerged, breathtaking in a borrowed emerald gown that hugged her frame. Her curls swept up to reveal the graceful curve of her neck, a simple silver necklace her only adornment. "You look stunning," Ethan said, meaning it more than any compliment he'd ever given, his breath catching as she blushed, her dimples deepening. "Thanks." Emma swore this dress was gala-approved. Claire teased, but her fingers fidgeted with her clutch, betraying her nerves. Ethan offered his arm, guiding her into the car, the faint lavender scent of her lingering as they drove to the gala. At the Art Institute, the grand staircase glowed under floral arches, Chicago's elite sipping champagne and exchanging calculated pleasantries, their stares tracking Ethan and Claire as they entered. Claire's grip tightened on his arm. "Everyone's looking," she whispered, her eyes wide. Ethan leaned closer, his voice low. "They're looking at you. You outshine them." Her smile steadied, and Ethan felt a strange pride introducing her to colleagues, watching her charm them with stories of her students' art projects. During a lull, Claire wandered to admire a Monet exhibit, her face alight with wonder, and Ethan overheard an elderly philanthropist, Mrs. Evelyn Hart, murmur approvingly, "She's a breath of fresh air, Ethan, not like your usual companions." The comment stung and warmed in equal measure, Claire's authenticity a stark contrast to the socialites he'd once escorted. As they mingled, a familiar voice sliced through the crowd. Sophia Langston, his ex-fiancée, her platinum hair and designer gown as flawless as ever. "Ethan, darling, you're a rare sight at these events," she purred, her smile not reaching her eyes. Ethan's jaw tightened, memories of her betrayal flooding back, how she'd used his trust to leak company secrets to a rival before leaving him. "Sophia," he acknowledged coolly. Her gaze flicked to Claire, assessing her with a dismissive smirk. "And who's this? A new project?" Claire returned, her posture straight, offering a hand. "Claire Dawson. I work with foster youth." Sophia's eyebrows arched. "How noble. Ethan, slumming it these days?" Ethan's temper flared, his voice sharp. "Claire's work changes lives, something you wouldn't understand." Sophia's smile faltered, but she recovered, touching Ethan's arm. "I'm back in Chicago, Ethan. We should catch up. I've missed us." Ethan stepped back, noticing Claire's tense expression as she watched the exchange. Before he could reassure her, the gala's host announced the program, and Claire was unexpectedly called to the stage to accept an award for her community center's literacy program. Panic flickered in her eyes, her hand gripping Ethan's. "No one told me," she whispered. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "You've got this. They're lucky to hear you." Claire ascended the stage, her initial tremble giving way to passion as she spoke of her students, their dreams, and the power of stories to heal broken hearts, her voice cracking when she mentioned a boy who'd found hope through a book she'd given him. The audience, including hardened tycoons, was visibly moved, some dabbing tears as they rose to applaud. Ethan's chest swelled with admiration, her courage and heart reshaping his view of what mattered. As Claire returned, glowing but shaken, Ethan guided her to a quiet corner near a sculpture garden, the city's lights twinkling through the windows. "You were incredible," he said, his voice thick. Claire laughed softly, brushing a stray curl from her face. "I nearly fainted, but thank you for believing I could do it." Their eyes locked, the air charged with unspoken feelings, and Ethan leaned closer, drawn by her warmth. Their lips met in a soft, tentative kiss, her hands resting against his chest. The world fading until his phone buzzed insistently. Ethan pulled back, cursing under his breath as he saw Nora's name. Orion's board was demanding an emergency call. Claire's smile was gentle, but tinged with disappointment. "Go. It's important." Ethan shook his head, reluctant to break the moment. "You're important." She touched his cheek, her fingers cool. "We'll pick this up later, I promise." Ethan signaled Marcus to drive Claire home, ensuring she wouldn't face the cold alone, and as she slipped into the Bentley, he felt a pang of loss, her presence already a vital thread in his life. Back in his office, handling the Orion crisis, Ethan's mind drifted to Claire's speech, her belief in second chances echoing his own buried hopes. As he left the call, a chilling text arrived from an unknown number. "Sweet moment at the gala, Caldwell. $10 keeps it off the front pages. Detail soon." His blood ran cold, the memory of that photographer outside Aurora resurfacing. Someone had been watching, and the threat to expose Claire to his ruthless world made his stomach churn. He needed to protect her, but cutting her out felt like losing the stars he'd once loved. Ethan's penthouse was a fortress of glass and steel, but as he paced its expanse at midnight, the Chicago skyline offered no solace. The Orion deal had been salvaged with a tense call, but his phone's latest message, a text from an unknown number, burned in his mind. Asterisk lovely kiss at the gala. $10 million keeps it off the tabloids. Details soon. Asterisk attached were grainy photos of him and Claire, their lips meeting under the Art Institute's snow-dusted steps, her emerald dress unmistakable. Rage and fear coiled in his chest. Not for himself, his wealth made him a target, but for Claire, whose quiet life could be shattered by the spotlight. He summoned his security chief, Vincent, who arrived within the hour, his face grim as he analyzed the text. "Burner phone, untraceable for now," Vincent said, "but the timing suggests someone at the gala. Sophia's a likely suspect, given her financial straits post-divorce." Ethan's jaw tightened, recalling Sophia's venomous glance at Claire, her insinuation that Claire was beneath him. "Find proof," he ordered, his voice cold. "And don't let." This touched Claire. Vincent nodded, but his warning lingered. "Sir, you might need to distance yourself from her until this is resolved." The suggestion was logical, a move Ethan would have made effortlessly in his boardroom battles, but the thought of pulling away from Claire felt like severing a lifeline. Her kiss, her belief in him, had cracked open a part of him he'd locked away since Sophia's betrayal, and he wasn't willing to lose that light. By morning, Ethan's resolve hardened. He'd face this head, but first, he needed to see Claire, to be honest about the risk she'd face by staying near him. He texted her, asking to meet at the River North Community Center, her sanctuary. Arriving in jeans and a hoodie, a baseball cap shading his face, Ethan felt out of place among the center's vibrant chaos kids painting murals, teens laughing. Over a board game, Claire at the heart of it all, her hazel eyes bright as she helped a girl braid her hair. She spotted him, her smile faltering at his tense expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, leading him to a quiet corner where construction paper stars hung from the ceiling. Ethan exhaled, his voice low. "After the gala, I got a blackmail threat. Photos of us kissing, demanding $10 million to keep them private." Claire's eyes widened, confusion giving way to hurt. "But we did nothing wrong." Ethan nodded, his hands clenching. "In my world, privacy's a luxury. The media would swarm you. Your kids, you center. They dig into your life until nothing's yours anymore." Her lips parted, processing the weight of his words, and for a moment, he feared she'd retreat. Instead, she squared her shoulders, her voice steady. "So you're here to say goodbye, to protect me?" Ethan shook his head, surprised by the fierceness. In his own voice, "No, I'm here to tell you the truth. You deserve to choose, knowing what this could cost." Claire's gaze searched his, her fingers brushing a stray curl from her face. "You think I can't handle it?" Ethan's chest ached at the steel in her tone. "I think you shouldn't have to. Your life has purpose, Claire. Mine could ruin that." She stepped closer, her hand covering his warm and grounding. "That's my decision, Ethan. But first, tell me, is this real for you, or am I just a break from your world?" Her question stripped him bare, echoing his own doubts. "It's real," he said, his voice raw. "More real than anything since my dad died. That's why I'm scared." Claire's expression softened, her thumb tracing his knuckles. "It scares me too, but I've never run from what matters. My kids face worse every day, and I fight for them. If we're worth it, I'll fight for us." Her courage shamed him, a reminder of the boy who'd once faced loss with hope, not walls. Ethan squeezed her hand, a promise forming. "Then, we face this together." His phone buzzed Vincent with an update. "I need to meet my security team," he said, reluctant to leave. Claire nodded, her dimples faint but resolute. "We'll talk tonight?" Ethan agreed, leaving her amid the center's warmth, her strength fueling his resolve. Vincent's report was damning. The burner phone's activation traced to a tower near Sophia's hotel, and a private investigator caught her meeting a known tabloid contact hours after the gala. "She's desperate," Vincent said, showing photos of Sophia's tense exchange. Her divorce left her with debts, no leverage. Ethan's fury surged, but he saw an opening. A call to Richard, Sophia's ex and Ethan's rival, confirmed Richard's disdain for her schemes. "She's shopping rumors about you," Richard said, his voice clipped. "I'll add a confidentiality clause to her settlement. One leak, she loses everything." Ethan seized the chance, ensuring Sophia's silence without a payout. That evening, Claire arrived at Ethan's penthouse, her presence softening its sterile edges. They cooked pasta together, her laughter filling the space as she teased his clumsy chopping. "You're a billionaire, and you can't dice garlic?" she said, nudging him. Ethan grinned, a lightness he hadn't felt in years. Over dinner, he explained Sophia's role in the blackmail, now neutralized. "Richard's deal shuts her down," he said, watching Claire's reaction. She nodded, her fork pausing. "That's efficient. Does it always feel like a chess game?" Ethan sighed, setting down his glass. "Too often. But with you, it's different. You make me want to be more than a strategist." Claire's eyes shimmered, her voice soft. "We didn't finish last night's talk. What happens next?" Ethan leaned forward, the city's glow framing her face. "I want us to try, but my world's brutal. I need to know you're sure." Claire considered, her fingers tracing the tablecloth. I don't fit in your penthouse, and you don't fit in my center, but maybe we build something new together. Her wisdom struck him, a vision of integration he'd never dared imagine. He reached for her hand, his voice steady. I'm willing, Claire. Are you? Her smile, radiant despite the risk, was his answer. 6 months later, Ethan stood in the River North Community Center's gymnasium, surrounded by the joyful chaos of Claire's kindergarten class performing a play she'd written, a whimsical tale of stars finding their way home. The room buzzed with parents snapping photos, kids in paper crowns stumbling through lines, and Claire, radiant in a simple sweater, directing with gentle encouragement. Ethan, in a rare casual sweater, felt out of place yet grounded, his usual boardroom armor replaced by a warmth he barely recognized. A small girl with pigtails tugged his sleeve, her eyes wide. Mr. Ethan, are you Miss Claire's boyfriend? He crouched, meeting her gaze, a smile tugging at his lips. I am. Is that okay? She frowned, considering. Only if you're nice to her. She's the best. Ethan nodded solemnly, extending his pinky. Pinky promise, I'll be nice. Her tiny finger hooked his, sealing the vow, and Claire caught his eye from across the room, her dimples flashing in quiet amusement. The play ended to raucous applause, and Ethan helped Claire fold chairs, their hands brushing as they worked. A silent language they built over months of stolen moments coffee at her center. Late-night walks by Lake Michigan, her teaching. Him to bake cookies in her cramped kitchen. That evening, Ethan's penthouse transformed into a fundraiser for Claire's literacy initiative, a program expanding her teaching methods to schools citywide. The space, once sterile, now glowed. With purpose, tables laden with books donated by Claire's kids, their handwritten notes tucked inside. Chicago's elite mingled, their checkbooks open as Claire moved through the crowd, a passion for her students' futures disarming even the most cynical tycoons. Ethan watched her, pride swelling in his chest, a feeling as foreign as the love that had grown steadily since their first kiss. Margaret, his longtime mentor and a formidable philanthropist, appeared at his side, her silver hair catching the light. She's extraordinary, Ethan, she said, her shrewd eyes softening. Your grandfather built empires, but he never built connections. You're learning what he couldn't. Ethan's throat tightened, thinking of his grandfather's cold lessons. In power, never love. She's teaching me, he admitted, his gaze fixed on Claire as she laughed with a donor, her hazel eyes alight. Margaret's voice turned pointed. You love her, don't you? Have you told her? Ethan froze, realizing he hadn't, not in those words. The truth had been there in every touch, every shared glance, but he'd held back, fear lingering from Sophia's betrayal, from a life spent guarding his heart. Margaret's knowing look spurred him forward. He crossed the room, taking Claire's hands, her warmth grounding him amid the crowd. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice low, urgent. Her eyes searched his, curious but unafraid. What is it? Ethan took a breath, the city skyline framing them through the penthouse windows, snow falling softly outside, just as it had the night they met. I love you, Claire Dawson. I think I started falling the moment you stood up to that. Vendor, your fire in the snow. Her eyes shimmered with tears, but her smile was brilliant, those dimples carving deeper. I love you too, Ethan, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion. I knew it when you bid on that astronomy book for my kids, not to impress me, but because you saw them. He pulled her close, her head resting against his chest, the world narrowing to the rhythm of their breaths. The crowd faded, the fundraisers hum, a distant murmur as they stood, wrapped in each other, the snow outside a quiet echo of their beginning. Ethan marveled at the shift in himself, the cold CEO who'd once measured success in acquisitions. Now measuring it in moments, in Claire's laughter, her courage, the way she saw him, not his wealth or title, but the man who'd once dreamed under stars. Their journey hadn't been seamless. The blackmail threat had tested them, forcing Ethan to confront his instinct to retreat. But Claire's resolve had held them together. Her belief that love was worth the risk, teaching him to trust again. They'd spent weekends at her center. Ethan reading to kids who called him Star Guy for his telescope stories, and nights in his penthouse, Claire sketching program plans while he cooked, their worlds blending into something new. As the fundraiser wound down, guests departed, leaving scattered books and signed pledges. Claire turned to Ethan, her face flushed with triumph. "We raised enough for 3 new centers," she said, her voice trembling with joy. Ethan kissed her forehead, his heart full. "You did that. You're changing lives." She shook her head, her hand on his cheek. "We did it. I couldn't have dreamed this big without you." Margaret's words echoed success beyond profit, and Ethan understood. Finally, what his father had meant when he'd said the stars held answers no balance sheet could. He and Claire stepped onto the penthouse balcony, the city blanketed in white, the air crisp with possibility. "What now?" Claire asked, her scarf fluttering in the wind, her eyes reflecting the city's glow. Ethan tucked a curl behind her ear, his fingers lingering. "We keep building us, your programs, whatever comes next. I'm all in." Her smile was his anchor, her love his compass. Some might call their meeting chance, a vendor's argument on a snowy night, but as Ethan looked into Claire's eyes, he called it destiny, the best deal he'd ever made.